Hey, I'm Dr. Leslie Wakefield. I'm a pelvic health physical therapist, and this is her sex podcast. Today, my guest is Sofia, the Happy V, and her business is called the Happy Vagina Project. I absolutely love the name. It makes me feel happy just hearing it. So it's already been successful. But her work is to support moms to tackle lackluster sex and libido so that they can find the spark in their relationships and in themselves. And here's the part that about to get so interesting after having kids, because I think that there is just so much weight around sex, returning to sex, enjoying sex. How long can I wait until I have to have sex, after kids? How long is my husband willing to wait? I mean, there's so much spoken and unspoken that goes on within relationships and between friends and between a woman and her OBGYN. So what a wonderful topic. And I think very pertinent to pretty much anybody listening. Please take it away.
Hello. Thanks so much for having me, Leslie. I really appreciate it. Sex after kids is my jam. I came to this journey myself, actually before kids. So I've been sex coaching, or doing sex education for the last decade or so now, which is kind of crazy to realize.
You feel old when I say that about my PT. I'm like, oh boy.
Right? Oh. And it started before I had kids, before I had met my partner. I really spent my 20s at war with my vagina, hence the Happy Vagina Project. I was kind of she was my enemy. She was in pain when I was having sex. She wasn't cooperating. She was incapable of orgasm, or she didn't know what one was. We were constantly at the doctors with UTIs and yeast infections and you name it. We were not in a good relationship. Our friendship was off. And it wasn't until I realized that I needed to step out of fighting with my vagina and befriend her and listen to her and tune into what she was actually asking of me, and that was actually the solution to my challenges, right? So I ended up training as a Tantra coach, mostly because I really liked the holistic perspective. I liked that there's the physical component, the emotional component, and the spiritual and kind of energetic work component. And I work with clients with all three of those things to different levels of comfort. Energy work's not everyone's jam. You can still do so much without it, although it's very potent. And then I became a stepmom, and then I had two babies. So I am now the proud mom and stepmama of a 13-year-old, a 6-year-old, and a soon-to-be 3-year-old, which means I'm just tasting, stepping out of the haze of the first 3 years. And so I very much come to this with lived experience as well, right? And after I had my daughter, in particular, my first biological child, I just became so fascinated with the unique set of circumstances after kids, right? Because there's a unique set of physical things that are happening to your body that don't happen to adoptive parents, that don't happen to just long-term couples. They happen specifically to people who have had a baby in their body for 9 months and who are breastfeeding. And there's a specific set of emotional dimensions at play when you're welcoming a third person or being, or more than a third, a fourth, fifth, or sixth person into your relationship, as well as the gender scripts that kind of shift. So I talked to a lot of couples where things kind of felt fair and equally divided before we had kids. And then whatever we kind of learned from our parents about parenting can rear up. And what tends to happen, doesn't always happen, but men tend to go the provider route and women tend to go the caregiver route, and things start feeling uneven. And that has a huge effect on libido and sexual connection and stuff. And then the other big one for me really was the identity piece, right? Becoming a mother, becoming a parent totally shifts your entire sense of reality and what's important to you and who you are. Your sense of self, your connection to self, and all of that has an impact on how you show up sexually and how you show up in your relationship. And so I just became really fascinated about it. And I didn't see, and I still don't see a lot of people specifically working in this niche, right? So I see a lot of people who work on like low desire or libido mismatch. But I really like to focus on the characteristics that are unique to couples in long-term relationships with children, and what that looks like. So yeah, it's been an exciting journey, and I always love the people that I get to work with through it. It's been real privilege.
I think it's ubiquitous. I mean, certainly not everyone is in a long-term relationship. Not everyone is partnered. Not everyone has children. Not everyone has biological children. So it's not across the board. But in terms of the history of the species, it's kind of been a common theme. And I think that we are finally open enough to talk about it. And I hope that accepting enough to acknowledge a diversity of perspectives on it, of course, but I do think that there's probably some common themes that pop up as a coach. And I think pretty much anyone who has experienced parenthood is like, yeah, I got a couple of questions for her. I know you deal with and so I know these common themes pop up for you. What are some of the things that you hear really commonly in that situation? I just had kids. Things are changing. What's changing? What are people feeling? First, like, tell us what they're feeling and then tell us where they got to go.
Yeah. I mean, most of what I see is confusion, stuckness, and worry, or like frustration and resentment, right? So in the worst case scenarios that I'm seeing, typically it's a woman or a uterus owner who has like no desire for sex at all. And if we're talking early postpartum, she's just not even thinking about it because a baby just came out of her body. And there's all kinds of myths about how quickly she's supposed to bounce back and all those kinds of things. And sexpectations, I call them great sexpectations, right? That 6 weeks and you're ready to go.
I've been cleared.
Yeah. Instead of, it takes a year, literally, for your body to physically recover, maybe even more. And we won't even bother talking about emotional safety, which is like actually the most important thing, right?
Sure.
Later on, and I work with people in the very early stages. I tend to work mostly with people who are like, their kids are kind of between 1 and 10-ish, let's say. So they're not in the early period where, like, we all know we just need to take a break. It's more when people start to feel like they should be getting back to this by now, and they're not. And so they are feeling super guilty, embarrassed, ashamed, just a heaviness from like rejecting their partner day after day after day, week after week after week. Or they're feeling like anger and frustration that they're having to constantly say no to bids for this request, right? And a lot of that is underlined by a feeling of brokenness, kind of like where I was at before kids, but and have also felt of just like, there's something wrong with my body. I don't know what it is. There's nothing wrong with him or like our relationship. If we're going back to like a cis hetero situation, as soon as I am fixed, everything in our sex life will be better. And that enrages me to no end because sex is relational and it's not fixed in a vacuum with like one person. And for sure, I like to think of 4 different kind of areas of change. So like the biggest thing is like people do not know why they don't want sex anymore, or they don't know why it's painful, or it's not fun, or it's not feeling the way it did, right? I hear so much people are like, I just want to go back to easy, connected, spontaneous, like playful sex, right? And I go, did that even really exist in the first place? Or also like, here's why getting back to that can be a challenge, and maybe we can change the goalpost, right? So on the physical side, it's just a lot of people don't know how long recovery takes. A lot of people don't know how much of a hit your pelvic floor takes, and how much that relates to your sexual functioning, your ability to orgasm, and your sensation during orgasm, right? I still, to this day, I barely tore during both of my deliveries. I think I had like, what do they call it? Stage 1, or was I like surface level, like they didn't even want to stitch me up the second time. And just the other week, my partner had his fingers inside me and he found that spot, the same spot that always hurts every time he's there. And I'm like, it has been 6 years since my first delivery and 3 since my second. I have done pelvic floor physio work. I'm not good at doing my Kegels. And I still have tenderness here. I still have trauma here. I still have some pain here. And I know what it is, and I know why it's doing what it's doing, and I know what to do about it, but a lot of people don't, right? And so that can even just turn into a like, get the heck off me reaction with your partner, even if they're loving and everything's lovely, like your brain does all kinds of funky things, right?
Yeah, or it can make you avoidant because it adds a stress level. You either need to be explaining every inch of movement to your partner, or they're worried. I hear that all the time. I don't mind. I can work around it, but my partner's terrified to hurt me.
Yeah.
And so it adds this whole nother dimension to the interaction. Like you said, it's no longer just, oops, spontaneous. We just fell into bed on top of each other.
Yeah.
But there's a whole nother level that can add stress. And I hear from my patients avoidance.
Yeah. There's a tenderness, and then it just feels like work because we can't just go and do the thing and move on. We've got to like do all this stuff and be careful and work around and go slow or whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
So there's that resistance that comes up, and that's perfectly normal, especially when people don't have the skills to work through that, right? I don't think we give enough credit to the roles stress and sleep play, and those are both physical and crossing over into emotional factors. There's a reason I'm slightly more interested in sex now that my kiddo's approaching 3 and sleeping through the night, and it has a lot to do with just feeling more human, right? Stress, that's everything from the overstimulation of parenting all day and your nervous system just literally not wanting to have any more stimulation, even if it's yummy stimulation, to I talk to a lot of people who things might have been fine in the first year and then they go back to work. And now we're in a 2-income household with 2 parents who are working full time and kids going to daycare. And that is massively stressful. And you spend that first year at home with sick children, which just makes you feel like you're failing as a parent and failing as a worker and failing as a partner and failing as a friend and as a daughter and failing everywhere. And all of that has a huge impact as well on, I mean, what we're talking about when we're talking about enjoying sex, it's really our ability to be present in the moment with our body and with another person in a really vulnerable way with pleasure. That's really what like good sex is about.
I've never heard that description or definition. I absolutely love that. I'm going to use that. That's
and I'm like, I'm just having an epiphany here too, right? Where I'm like, good sex. I'm so communication
just make that up right now,
right?
But you didn't have to make that up.
Literally that just came out of me because I'm like, what is this all about? This is about, right? Being able to be present, relaxed, and focused on myself and my partner and the good time that I'm having.
I can't believe you just made that up right now.
And really so good. When you think about that, what gets in the way of that, right? So I can't be relaxed if I've got a massive amount of stress. If I'm stressing because I'm low-grade angry at my partner because he's not doing dishes, that's in the way. If I'm stressing because I don't want my kids to know that I'm a sexual being and I'm terrified they're going to hear me, that's going to get in the way. Or if I'm stressing because I'm worried that my 2-year-old's going to wake up in the middle of it and it's all going to be over. And so why bother even getting started?
Yeah.
Right? So tons of things are holding us back from getting relaxed. Present, I mean, time poorness is a huge thing for parents. If I'm worrying about my body hurting or if he's worrying about my body hurting, right? And also our connection to pleasure is huge in that, right? And so this is where we get more into the cultural stuff around the patriarchy. And in particular, like where I started with really focusing on women is we don't get taught that our pleasure matters, period. Never mind just our sexual pleasure. We don't get taught to masturbate, to touch ourselves, to get to know what feels good. That's all shameful, dirty, and taboo. We live in this capitalist society that has us working our butts off. So the notion of even allowing yourself to rest and relax with your partner, like choosing to go have sex when the house is an absolute chaotic disaster, can be a really hard choice to make when we're like living in this capitalist
Very
conditioning, right?
productivity driven, the to-do list.
Yeah.
You don't feel good unless you've checked off everything for the day.
Mm-hmm.
And either you don't put sex on that list because that's scheduling and that's not sexy and we just want it to be spontaneous. Or you do put sex on that list, but now it's a to-do and it brings a different vibe to it.
Totally. Yeah. So, I mean, I could go on and on about like the diagnosing factors, but the main thing is there something physical going on? Because if there's something physical going on, you may need the help of a physician. That could be a pelvic floor physio. That could be your doctor if your anxiety medication is causing libido issues, which a lot of people don't know. That could be, I got a Hashimoto's diagnosis. It's hypothyroidism. Low libido is a big part of that. So dealing with my hypothyroidism is helping me to get my libido back. Things like your birth control, is that having an effect on your libido? And your stress and your sleep and how you're eating, right? So there's like your physical wellness as well as like physical pain or like, episiotomy, all that kind of stuff. You need to like fix that. And that's definitely a case of like, there's something broken in my body and I need to fix it. But it's definitely usually not the entire piece of the puzzle, right? The second bucket or category is all the emotional. Go ahead.
It's not even that easy because if you are working part-time or full-time outside the home or full-time beyond full-time in the home, and you've got your kids and you've got all these other responsibilities, to take the time out to go to the OB, well, now you've got to either take off work, you got to get childcare, you got to wrangle your partner if you have one.
Yeah.
You got to figure out the insurance situation, which could involve like 4 hours of sitting on hold with a company that continuously hangs up on you. It's not as easy as it sounds.
Totally.
I've got a little pain. I think I'm just going to go see someone. That's usually, and women are always putting themselves last, not to stereotype, but at least in the people.
And the holistic piece too, right? I mean, like dealing with my Hashimoto's, I've been having meltdowns because I have the emotional labor involved in changing the entire way I eat just for me. Like I'm at the point where I feel like I need 2 freezers and 3 fridges. And like, I have to learn new, like it's it's not, and it makes you realize how flippant you go to the doctor and they're like, just change how you eat. And you're like, this is like how I shop, what recipes like all the things. And so you just give up, right? Like for sure. And part of what we want to talk about is like, why not to give up? But we've got our physical stuff. We've got the emotional bucket. That has everything to do with your relationship to yourself, your identity, all that stuff, and your relationship with your partner. If either of those things are struggling, if you've got postpartum depression, if you guys are if there's not equal balance in your relationship and you're pissed off all the time about chores, that is going to take its toll on your ability to get relaxed and present and vulnerable with your partner, right? Then we have the bucket of cultural messaging. So that's like all the shitty sex ed you never got, all the ways you have not even a clue how your libido actually works. So you don't feel like you're in the driver's seat of your body because you don't even know that you can be in the driver's seat of your body. You feel like you're at its mercy. To pressure to have sex a certain number of times a week, pressure to have sex in a certain way, or pressure to not have sex because moms aren't sexual beings. Like there's just all the cultural and religious messaging. I think of that as like brain gremlins. So there's just these little gremlins on your shoulder. More the emotional stuff would be like body weight stuff, like self-perception, right? I don't feel sexy anymore, all those kinds of things. So trying to diagnose and like put your finger on that, I'm like, well, watch my YouTube videos. That's the first place to start. But there's a lot of different factors. And I do have a quiz I'll share at the end to kind of help people pinpoint like where their starting point might be. Because my first goal is to try to say like, you are normal. There's lots of reasons why your libido is struggling right now. Many of them are shiftable or fixable or work-aroundable. But if you don't know what they are, then you're stuck at a loss. And most of the people I talk to are ignoring this issue and praying it will just get better over time. And my biggest worry for folks is, you let it go for a year, that's fine. But without talking about it and without connecting intentionally in other ways, right? And then you let it go for a second year and a third year. And then by the time your kiddos are 5 and you've actually got some free time in the afternoon, or you could have an afternoon delight day if someone takes the day off work, you're looking at each other and you're like, who is this stranger next to me? I don't know who you are. Who am I? And if you've let that rope go like so far, it's a lot of work to get back to each other. And then we all know where that goes, right? Like there's a reason people break up at kind of certain intervals. And so a lot of this is not necessarily about having the most magical sex ever. Like I ick sometimes on the internet when I just see people who are like, be luscious and wet and a sex goddess in 30 days. And I'm like, can we be practical here, people? Like, and so for me, like, I'm not saying that's impossible. I'm saying it's entirely possible. But if you are not having sex at all right now, or you can't tell me the last time you did, or the last time you did have sex, you did it out of guilt and you really didn't enjoy yourself, like, let's not make being a super wet all the time tantric sex goddess the goal. Let's make quality sexual time, which doesn't necessarily mean intercourse. I call it naked, sexy, fun time. Quality, naked, sexy, fun time. Once a month, twice a month. Like, let's make that the goal to start. Because if we can get there, then for sure we can get to like all the cool, jazzy, fun stuff we want to get to, But the cool, jazzy, fun stuff will be impossible if we don't even maintain some kind of functional bare minimum. We just won't want to play with that person anymore, Yeah. Gosh, I could talk forever.
I love it. What is your perspective? I've got 2 questions, and they're a little out of place, so I apologize, but I thought of them while you were talking. I didn't want to interrupt you. So I'll go back to the first one, then I'll come to the second one, if by any chance I remember the second one by the time I get there. You mentioned towards the beginning, you were talking about being overstimulated, which I think a lot of people relate to, not just people with children, not just people who are full-time caregivers or working full-time outside the home. Like, I think a lot of people can relate to that feeling. What about specifically, I hear women saying, I feel overtouched. Breastfeeding, or if they're not breastfeeding anymore, I have a toddler clinging to me constantly. I just want to be left alone for 10 minutes. And if we only have a 20-minute, 30-minute window a day, or we can get 1 or 2 hours a week, the two of us, I don't want to spend that time on being touched more. I want to spend that time on being alone and watching a movie in peace.
Yeah.
What do you like? How can someone navigate that very specific overtouched type of overstimulation?
Yeah. And so for me, this is about knowing some nervous system tools to help you. So for me, the ultimate goal is getting to naked, sexy, fun time, which to me is like pressure free. We're just naked and having fun, whatever that looks like, right? And the less pressure there is, the more likely it is to go where you're hoping it will go. And the other piece is that naked, sexy, fun time is about creating a party your libido wants to come to, right? So we haven't really gotten into like the dual control model, but the idea is people think that desire is a spontaneous thing and they should be able to just look at their partner and be wet and ready to go, or just have a thought and want to have sex at any time. And some people work that way. Most people do not. Most people have what's called responsive desire, where they respond to like a stimulus of some kind. And then your body has to be in a context, in a situation where it decides that it's like safe and acceptable to have sex. So we have this dual control model where inside your body, you're constantly scanning the environment for things that can excite your sexual system. Maybe it's a smell. Maybe it's the way your partner looks when he gets out of the shower or whatever. And then your system is also constantly looking for breaks. What are the cues that are telling me now is not the time to light this fire? I'm at Thanksgiving dinner. My children are going to wake up in 2 minutes, right? And so what ends up happening is most women in these situations, most people with the lower libido in this situation have a brake problem, not a gas pedal problem. So the other pieces of dimension there are your gas pedal and your brake pedal are have different levels of sensitivity. So what turns your gas pedal on is learned. Maybe the smell of lemons gets my pedal going. Maybe the smell of jasmine gets your pedal going. It's learned and it changes over time. As an example, maybe I was someone who was super into boob play before I had a kid. After I had a kid and I'm breastfeeding and my boobs now have this job to perform and someone else is sucking on my nipples, that may become a break for me now, right? So what is a brake and a gas pedal for you is learned and can change and shift. But how sensitive your gas and brake pedal are is genetic. So I am somebody who's a slow burn. I need to put a brick on my gas pedal to get it going. Some people, you can just tap the gas pedal and the car will go. I also need absolutely nothing to hit the brakes. I think I heard a rustling that meant maybe someone was awake and everything is shut down. Other people, you could put a brake on their brakes and their car would still be going. So this is an example of where knowing how your body works and your partner works is important, because fighting how your body works, just like fighting how my body worked, won't work for you. Knowing what it needs and your partner knowing what it needs and working together to give it that is what will help you, right?
How do you even bring that conversation? This is not even the second question I was thinking, but
Yeah.
it seems like you'd have to have really good communication skills. Let's say somebody's listening to this, they learn this, that resonates. I get the concept. I even see myself on that spectrum. Runs to the partner, babe, I figured it out.
Yeah.
You really have to have a lot of language and a lot of intimacy to be able to say that to someone, and then for someone to be able to hear you in a receptive way.
So we're going to keep the touched out thought. We're going to circle back to it. And I'll just say, like, this is why I designed my program the way that I did. First, it's about learning together in theory. So like sharing the concept, watching the Emily Nagoski TED Talk about the dual control model, getting your partner to listen to this podcast too, and talk about it in theory first. So don't talk about your own, just be like, that's interesting. What did you hear? What surprised you about this lecture, right? So it's not about you and me. It's about this concept or this idea that we learned. And then we get this shared language that we can start to refer to, right? The second piece is about then applying it to yourself to go, okay, well, if I listen to that, what I'm hearing is I'm like Sofia. I have a highly sensitive brakes and a dull gas pedal. So what does that mean, right? And maybe your partner's the opposite. And then it becomes more of and this is kind of what I walk people through, is then now that we know how I work, so let's map out, like, what are the biggest breaks for you? Maybe the biggest breaks for me right now are somebody waking up, me not feeling sexy, and having a hard time relaxing into the moment. Those are like my biggest hurdles that I've noticed today, because this is an ever-shifting thing, right? And today, what I've noticed is when I'm watching Bridgerton, I feel a little bit more primed and welcoming to stimulation, some requests that happen to me. So this is the thing that's working for me right now. Okay, cool. So how can we create an environment where I feel sexy? Maybe I'm wearing something. Maybe my partner puts extra emphasis on telling me I'm beautiful. Maybe I decide I'm going to tell myself I'm beautiful or that I'm not going to care. We're going to make sure we're only having sex when we have a sitter, or we try to do it like on a lunch hour, like sometime where like a child waking up is just not a thing. And I can't remember what the third block was. Oh, getting present. And we realized that Sofia needs this particular song or album is really working to help her get into the mood, right? So then whether you choose to schedule sex or have it spontaneously, I've been calling this the kind of like pre-launch checklist, like launching a rocket. There's like the things you need to do. So if my partner knows these things, then he knows when to pick a time to approach me when the kids are not around. He knows to maybe ask me to watch some Bridgerton ahead of time or suggest watching it with me ahead of time. He knows which song to put on when we go into the bedroom, and he knows what to say to me to make me feel good about my body. And he's got his pre-launch checklist. And it's not a guarantee, but it's helpful. And it's helpful to tell my libido, hey, we made a party and we gave you all your favorite things and we got rid of the things that you don't like, right?
Absolutely love that. It's a recipe for success. It's not saying you have to put the cake in the oven, but it's just like priming the pumps, setting the table, how do you call it? It's the party that your libido wants to attend.
To come to, right? What does she want to come to? Literally come, huh? But I was like, I don't even do puns, but and so this is where people get stuck because like the scheduling sex thing, they're like, that's mechanical, that's not intuitive, it's not romantic, right? But here's where I say, if you spend a night or a date watching Emily Nagoski's talk about the dual control model and intellectualizing, spending some time making a literal checklist, right? The first few times you implement it, it may feel awkward and clunky. Like you're about to go and you go, hey, babe, remember the checklist? Can you go get it? And then you both look at it and you do the things. And like, for sure, that feels out of the moment. But you do that 3 times. And the 4th time, you don't even have to ask your partner to get the checklist. He just knows. Playlist, music, boom, right? So it is going to feel mechanical the first couple times. I'm doing some parenting coaching right now. I am annoyed as shit as how much emotional labor I'm having to put into doing things in a different way. My brain is exhausted from having to like pre-anticipate these situations and do things in a certain way. And I just want to go back to like, it's easier to just fight with my daughter, And you're like, no, because eventually this stuff I'm putting work into is going to be second nature. And I'm going to be so grateful I didn't keep fighting with my daughter, right? So talking about it's huge. Talking about it in theory first, and that's why learning together, like reading a book together, watching these TED Talks together, taking a course together, where you learn and you develop a common language, you spend time intellectualizing, and then you spend time practicing in what I call like experimentation mode. So we're going to have a sex date that's not about having a great time. It's about trying all the things Sofia told us to do and just seeing how it goes. And we're going to expect it to be awkward and mechanical and shitty, but we're not trying to have the best ever. We're trying to follow the steps, right? And then you graduate from that to it all just being seamless and organic and happening.
So
right?
This brings me to the question I was going to ask, which you've sort of expanded on already, but I was going to ask about the idea of scheduling a sex date, because kind of pragmatically, it seems like if we want to prioritize this, we're just going to have to schedule it. And,
and this is where, like, this is one of the biggest myths where people are just like, that's not romantic and spontaneous. And I'm like, get rid of the notion that sex is supposed to be or ever even is spontaneously, easily magical, right? And I always say it this way. If you continue to show up at 10 p.m. after the bedtime battle, exhausted after a massive day, knee deep in laundry, expecting your libido to show up, good luck, man. And if you want to keep doing that, cool. But if we get back to the dual control model, we need to get rid of the breaks. If the breaks are fatigue, then you need to find a way to have sex in the morning. And if the morning is super busy school time, then it means getting a babysitter to take your kids to the park for 2 hours Sunday morning when you're both awake and alert, right? Like, this is not an option for everyone, but like literally playing hooky, taking time off in the day when your children are at school, huge, right? And then people go, well, but I can't just expect my libido to show up like on command. And this is where I go, well, it's naked, sexy fun time then, right? And if you show up to the planned naked, sexy fun time with the only goal of getting naked and being intimate with your partner, sex will happen, right? You're expecting it to magically be conjured at 11 p.m. at night when you're exhausted because you just think that's when you're supposed to have sex, right? It's not about it magically conjuring on cue. It's about showing up and going, all right, we're here. It's 10 a.m. The kids are gone for 2 hours. What ingredients can I add to the party right now that I know will help? They won't guarantee, but they'll help, right? We're going to put on a certain song. We're going to play some strip poker and see what happens, right? What can I do to get relaxed? What can I do to get playful? And what can I do to get connected? And when you have little activities and tricks and tools you can use to do that, all of a sudden you're in the place that you want to be, and you're happy to be touching your partner, and you're happy to be
playing. It all comes together, and it felt natural and spontaneous because you put the ingredients where you could easily
to make it happen. Right. Yeah. So if we circle back to the touched out part, just a minute, the big thing there is, for sure, like there's certain seasons where I did like an Instagram reel the other day where I was like, you can only choose 2 out of a list of things. And like one of them was time alone and one of them was time alone with your partner, right? Because like sometimes you have to decide which one it is. Sometimes you may need to be in a season where you prioritize the time alone with yourselves in order to build back up to a season where you're going to choose that time with your partner. I think that's important to acknowledge, that sometimes the solo time is the most important thing for you in this moment, and that's okay. Sometimes I encourage people to, like, you could be masturbating in that time, and that would also help you. That's probably a topic for like a whole other call, but prioritizing sex for yourself, again, that's something women have a lot of squicks and discomfort with, but it will help. But the other piece is, like, let's say you have 30 minutes and you're like, damn it, like, I don't want to be touched, but like, I can't think of the last time we even sat on the couch alone together, and like, I really need to make something happen, is to use tools to try to do, I call it cleansing the palate. So, let's say you've just gotten the kids off to bed. Everybody's asleep. They're pretty good sleepers, so you know they're not going to wake up. Like, don't just mindlessly go sit on the couch and start cuddling with your partner and you're uncomfortable with. Like, you haven't made a transition from one situation to another situation. And that transition can be really simple. It can be as simple as like going into your bedroom and taking 5 deep breaths alone and just imagining yourself like letting go of the day and imagining yourself like getting connected to your partner. It could be something like a 2-minute dance party where you put your favorite song on in the bathroom and you shake and shimmy and like, just like shake out your nervous system. I'm trying to think of some other examples. Feet up the wall is a really huge one. Or a lot of different, like, tapping your body. Any of these kind of like nervous system hacks where you're just trying to like get present into your body, notice what's happening, and like shake out whatever you might have been experiencing, and then walk to the couch to be with your partner and watch Netflix with just that micro minute of intention in between can be huge, right? And the second piece of that, and one of the biggest things I do, and I walk people through it after the quiz that I'm going to share you. It's one of the biggest things that it basically takes people on this journey to identify whether their nervous system, their communication with their partner, their relationship with pleasure, or their mindset is the biggest hurdle right now. So if you get the nervous system result, I walk through this game that I'm just about to talk about, where one of the biggest hurdles, again, when we talk about pressure, is my partner will make a move. Maybe, let's say I'm washing the dishes. He comes up behind me. He wraps his arms around me and like touches my boobs a little bit. My brain automatically goes, I have to say yes to intercourse. Like, I make this huge leap from what's just happened to what I think is expected of me or what I'm forecasting is expected of me. And so my brain cannot go from, I had the day that I just had and my hands are knee deep in the dishwasher or like the sink, to fully naked sex intercourse and all the work that entails. But if my partner made a very specific request for a very specific kind of touch or thing, and I knew I was only saying yes or no to that thing. Can I kiss the back of your neck right now?
That's even
Can
just
I
so
give
sweet to
you
hear.
a shoulder massage? Right? And the rule of the game is if I say yes, I'm only saying yes to the thing you just offered. There's a level of safety, like this is all about consent, but there's a level of nervous system safety where my body can go, I just have to say yes to this one thing. And then I'll enjoy the thing while my partner does it because I'm not worried he's going to go from kissing my neck to like trying to take my pants off. He's just going to kiss my neck.
You removed a certain element of pressure that you are actually putting on yourself. Maybe it's learned.
Yeah.
Maybe you're completely right. I don't know
Totally.
what that is.
Yeah.
But you're removing that pressure when you set that little boundary in advance.
Yeah. And you can make it playful. I call it the may I, or would you be willing game. And so your partner could be like, may I kiss your forehead? Would you be willing to let me massage your feet? Whatever it is, right? And then you get to counter offer. So maybe they ask if they can kiss your neck and your body's like, no. But there's another part of your body that's like, oh, but I'd love you to just put some deep pressure on my low back, right? And so this gets back to the skills of being able to like close your eyes and tune into your body. And the best example I have for this is, and I don't know if you've ever experienced this, tell me if this is just me. You go to the massage therapist and they're doing work on you. And let's say they're working on your back right now and they're doing real deep, like along the spine stuff. And like your left foot is going, pick me, pick me. Do you know what I mean? Like, come and touch me. That is the little voice we're looking for, right? And sex ultimately is about being able to tune into that in any given moment, vocalize to your partner that you want that thing or that you want to do that thing to them, hear a counter negotiation if that's not where they're at, and then do the thing and enjoy the thing, whatever it is, right? And so we can practice these skills in completely non-sexual contexts. And that's so much of what I do is just give people the ability to practice these skills so that when they're using them during sex, it feels seamless. But taking that pressure off is huge.
Question.
Yeah.
Everything you described is lovely, but when I watch movies, that's not how come-ons work, and that's not how it goes. They just go winky, winky, and she goes, and then he picks her up and throws her onto the bed and penetrates with vigor, and she loves it. It sounds like, I hear the word like negotiation, and it sounds like steps he has to learn and then follow. And then like we have to have like a whole language that we've established in advance. Like,
I know. I wish we could throw pop culture in the trash sometime. I like watch Sex Education, the show with the teenagers, and then tell me. It has done us such a disservice. And this is why I talk about the cultural messaging quadrant. Like people tell me they want it to be easy, blah, blah, blah. I can't tell you how many people are frustrated in this process and have low libido because the sex they're having isn't great. But the reason they're having not great sex is because they're like pissed their partner doesn't have some magical hands that just know how to please them, with like no discussion. And I always kind of say like the unique gift of sex after children, which is kind of the unique gift of sex after any massive life change anyways. Like this is all just leadership and communication skills, right? In a sexual context. So it's the same as like you can expect your career to just magically do amazing things for you, or you can decide what you want, create a vision for the career that you want, develop the skills that you need to have it, and chip away at it and believe in yourself and make it happen, right? Your sex life is the same. If you want great sex. And this is the thing that we don't see in movies. Like the best lover ever, that guy who flinged that girl, like the first however many times they had sex, he probably asked her a lot of questions about what she liked and how she liked it and how she wanted it. We don't ever see the like awkward parts where people are trying a new thing and it's going weird. And like, this is the biggest myth is like, we just expect everyone, we're like supposed to be born 5-star sex chefs without ever cracking a book. without ever communicating with the actual physical person that we're relating to. And so here's the thing, you may have gotten away with that before kids, but now likely, not always, but likely, the things that used to turn you on are different now for you. Or, that thing your partner used to do always that was like the go-to move is now an absolute turn off, or it's not reacting the same way. And so your partner's looking for the pot of gold, but he's got an outdated map. And you have to draw the map for him, or you have to draw the map together, right? And lots of things have likely changed for him too, right? And so that's what the communication part is. Like, we need to create a map. And you cannot, and that's fine. I'm cool if you want to keep wishing your sex life would be great. And I'm cool if you want to keep wishing that you could have what you had before your kids came along. And I'm cool if you want to be in a sexless marriage for the next 20 years. Like, I still want to be having sex when I'm 80, whatever that looks like for my 80-year-old body. I'll be renegotiating it with my partner then. And if I'm in a car accident and I get a concussion, I'll be renegotiating my sex life then. When my partner's parents die and he goes through grief for 2 years, I'll be renegotiating my sex life then. And this was the original insight for me with the Happy Vagina Project, was the skills it takes to have a better sex life will make you better at all the parts of your life. They will make you a better parent. They will make you better at work. They will make you better in all of your other relationships. Sex at its heart is a social skill with a few particular body parts involved. But like, I'm not your better blowjob coach. I'm not your BDSM coach. Like, I'm here to help you with the social skills part, because taking the BDSM webinar to like spice things up is awesome. But if you don't have good communication, and if you don't have nervous system safety, and if you don't know how to relax into pleasure, and if you still insist on doing the BDSM at 11 o'clock when you're exhausted, it will fail massively. You got to be able to do this other stuff first, and then you can add the fun, kinky, exciting things,
Yeah, everything you were saying and describing all the steps and the work to put into it and how you correlated it to career, I was thinking, that sounds like relationship building. That sounds like learning your partner. That sounds like expecting in a good way, your partner who loves you to learn you and to take responsibility for facilitating that for each other. And it sounds like, I'm sure people have excellent relationships with no sex. Honestly, I hear that all the time. Not supposing any particular amount of sex is correct, but if you want to do the things that you're describing, I imagine you build a stronger relationship and a stronger intimate connection as well. Emotionally connection.
Yeah, people are trying to, my Tantra coach always used to say, people expect to jam their genitals together and have the like cosmic amazing sex that they hear about. And it's like, you got to put your heart and your minds in sync first, and then you can put your genitals together, and then you will go to another universe when you have sex.
Right? When you said that, I snorted a little bit of tea up the back of my jamming your genitals
and
together.
At the same time, like, I know there are people listening, kind of like you're saying, it's just like, why bother? Why should I care? All of these things, right? And for me, like, yeah, you're going to hear the fear mongering. And I know every woman listening's got some deep down, like, he's going to leave me or cheat on me whisper. But there is a more important reason to matter than that. And that is your own pleasure. Like, your vagina is your second heart. And by denying yourself any sexuality, masturbating, anything, you've literally cut off a part of your body. You've cut off your second heart. You shoved her in a closet. You told her you'll maybe come visit once a year, and that is okay for you. And it's not. Like, again, my premise when I first started working with the Happy Vagina Project was I read this amazing book by Naomi Wolf called Vagina, A New Biography. I don't know if you're familiar with it at all. Seminal for me, because she was just like, the patriarchy does not want you having good sex because orgasms are so good for the female body, for bodies with uteruses, and the the chemicals that go off in your brain and all that stuff. Like, we would be running the world if we were all having the orgasms we deserve. Like, the orgasm gap is a real thing. There are real hurdles for sure. And this is part of why I transitioned from working exclusively with women to couples, was because I was like, I can empower the crap out of you to like ask better and communicate better and like all these things. But if I haven't brought him along for the ride, you're just going to dump his ass because you're not going to tolerate it. Right. And so I can't save every couple. I can't support every couple in that journey. Like, if your male partner doesn't want to participate, he doesn't want to participate, and you've got bigger issues, right? But there are many male partners or partners who do want to participate, who don't know how to participate. And I was like, this is why I have to do a program for couples, because it's about both of you learning together. And as much as I'm focused on the female perspective in this and supporting the lower libido partner, which is mostly women in my experience. And I mean, I come from a cis hetero couple, and that's the world that I work in for sure. Although I do work to be as inclusive as I can. Now I forgot where I was going with my rant.
You love working with couples because you got to take the other partner along for the ride.
You got to take everybody along for the ride. And, men and penis owners have their own stuff. Like, a lot of them have their own trauma. We didn't even talk about trauma today. They have their own expectations from society about, we're supposed to be the virgins that are pure, and they initiate us into sex, which puts all the pressure on them to be the 5-star sex expert who's telling us how it's supposed to go. Like, completely unfair. And there's all kinds of double standards for them as well. Never mind, aging penis owner bodies and soft penises and premature ejaculation, which is a huge thing I see people dealing with, where sex is just dissatisfying because it doesn't last long enough. And erectile dysfunction, and those are related to stress and all that other stuff. So, for me, this is about supporting couples to like maintain their bond so they can be the best versions of themselves and the best couple they can be, like, also for their kids. There's times where I'm like, why do I do the work that I do? I could be like facilitating peace somewhere. Like, I have such a broad skill set,
Yes,
but like,
you could.
if we're talking about a world with poly crisis and all this stuff, like, we need healthy and whole families. And not every couple should stay together forever, for sure. But tolerating a sexless marriage does not show your children how to live with pleasure and how to live in a loving and connected and playful and intimate relationship, which means we just pass that on. And our children are better off in whole families when that's the healthiest thing for the couple, And so I want to prevent unnecessary relationship breakdowns that are caused by people not realizing how important their sex life is and not giving it the oxygen that it deserves,
I love how you setting an example for your children. You're not going to be sitting down with your 3-year-old necessarily and, saying, Mommy and Daddy are going to da-da-da-da because we prioritize pleasure.
Yeah.
But I do think, and this is her sex, so we're going to talk about her sex. I do think for women that showing up for your children happy, showing up for your children, your fullest self, whatever that means to you. Not some other person's standard, but showing up as your best self, your fullest self, your most pleasured self. Set that example for your children, and you'll be better for your children also. Not to lay on the extra pressure. I mean, nobody wants parenting advice. Like,
no,
be a better person for your children. But when we're talking about like all the different reasons to prioritize your personal pleasure, I do think that sometimes it's helpful when a woman knows that it's not just impacting her, but it's also impacting her family.
Well, and I think, again, I try to reframe that as like, this could feel like yet another thing to do. And I want to reframe it as like, it's one thing that would support you with all these other things.
Yeah,
right?
That's a better way to say it. Thank you.
It is the most vulnerable place to practice these things. And I just think about like, what are my kids seeing about how a relationship's supposed to work, right? So like, I worked at a women's center for 3 years. I'm all about violence prevention. I teach consent-based workshops to kids. So much of this is taught through movies, like we've talked about. and what people are seeing in the home. So even if they're not seeing abuse in the home, if what they see is mom being critical and frustrated all the time, legitimately so, probably, dad avoiding or whatever, tension, low grade that we think we're hiding, not hanging out very much, not a lot of laughter, right? Like what role model, what are we showing kids about what they can expect a relationship to look like, right? And I'm not the perfect model of it all the time. We never are. But I want my kids to see their parents laughing together, touching each other. I don't need to like 6-degree make out with my partner in front of them, but like I want them to see us being in love and knowing what that looks like, feeling that from us more often than not, like we're going to fight. There's going to be times where there's all that stuff. That's my goal. That's my desire in terms of teaching my children. And then, I mean, we could go on a whole other rant about women and all that stuff, right? But there was this quote going around the internet that just was like, how many relaxed women did you know in your life growing up? Who taught you about smelling the roses, about leaving the house in a disaster and going paddleboarding in the afternoon because that's what's going to give you pleasure in this moment. And
Permission.
when we talk about the state of the world and the poly crisis and like all these things, I do personally believe that like personal pleasure and community pleasure and personal care and community care are huge parts of that. And women and couples like reclaiming these things back from colonialism and back from capitalism is like how we change things,
I think there's you touched on it too when you're talking about the Naomi Wolf book, but a woman's pleasure is a powerful thing. And if you want it to be.
Yeah.
We have to, paraphrase all these things, of course, but if you want it to be, a woman's pleasure can be a very powerful thing. And it's not often prioritized. And it's not exampled to us in a lot of our family history or in a lot of the media that we consume. And so everything that you're talking about, all the steps that you're talking about, I'm hearing, in particular in the context of after having children, when your role has shifted and now you're responsible for all these other lives and how to still prioritize your pleasure if you want to. And the way to do that in relationship, when you don't necessarily, it's not coming as natural. You don't have necessarily the brain space or the touch space or, the stimulation level for it, but making it a priority because it is such a powerful thing. I think that's a wonderful way that you impact individuals, but also culture and society in general. If we could all prioritize that a little bit more, be that woman that looks a little bit relaxed.
Yeah. Well, it's just not waiting for conditions to be perfect, right? Like, I think there's this notion of when there's time, and I'm quickly realizing like there's a window where my children sleep through the night, but I have a 13-year-old now. He's up late. His bedroom is right across from mine. That is actually my bigger sex hang up right now. So there's seasons in our relationship and it will change what they look like in each of those seasons. And keep losing my train of thought today.
They're all
forget
good
where I was going now. Yeah. Forget where I was going. What? I forget. Oh, no, it's gone. It's so funny. Like something about the time, making it a priority and thinking about the conditions to be perfect. So it's easy to be like, when the kids start sleeping through the night, we'll do this. When this happens, we'll do this. When we are no longer fighting about the chores, we can start to have sex. When I am less stressed about my job, we can start to have sex, right? And you can put off dealing with this until the cows come home because there will always be a reason to be stressed out, a reason to not be sleeping well, a reason to be uncomfortable having sex in your own home, which I'm trying to like befriend the teenage days where we like take the minivan out somewhere, where you like didn't have anywhere to do it. You could wait forever for the perfect conditions. And what I'm saying is like, you can do it even if you have very little time. You can do it even if you're mad at your partner. You can do it even if you're totally maxed out. and actually doing it in the right way. So not forcing yourself to have laxer sex, but having a little mini party your libido wants to show up to will help you feel more connected to your partner and snowball things in the opposite direction and alleviate some of your stress. Like, again, we could do a whole podcast episode on how pleasure is medicine, literally, for your body, right? So every time you choose 5 minutes to take 3 deep breaths instead of rushing, you're going to release oxytocin and dopamine and hormones in your body that are going to counteract the cortisol and the other things that are running all the time. And I'm definitely leaning hard right now into the kitchen's a mess, and I'm going to sit on the couch and read for an hour anyways, because the kitchen will always be a mess, but it's been hard to do that. But I'm working on it.
I would love to wrap up the conversation with you gave me a list of common myths that you hear.
Mm-hmm.
I want to give them a little bit of airtime because you've told me these myths. I want to let everybody hear these myths, even if we don't deep dive all of them, but just to sort of point a finger and shine some light, open up the conversation. You ready?
Yeah.
Myth number 1, if I don't spontaneously want sex, I am broken.
Mm-hmm. So we talked a lot about this, and this is going back to the dual control model, or just this notion that your body and your libido has a unique blueprint. Learn what it is and work with it instead of against it. And also work with your healthcare professionals around any kind of physical stuff that's happening.
Myth number 2, sex is all about the PNV. For those that don't know that code, that's penis in vagina.
Mm-hmm. So I like to change the P and the V to pleasure and vulnerability, right? So it's kind of like what we talked about. Sex is just a moment where you can be present and relaxed and vulnerable with your partner. So great sex has nothing to do with penises and vaginas. It's about being naked and touching each other in ways that feel good, whatever that looks like for people, and getting vulnerable enough with each other to go there and relax into it.
Myth number 3, there's a certain amount of sex that we should be having.
Yes. Probably the number one question I get from people is, how much sex should I be having? And the answer is, as much as you would like to. And so this just goes back to the idea of like that career analogy that I made. In different seasons of your relationship post kids, you want to have conversations with your partner about what would work for you well right now. For some people, that's sex every 4 months, and they're great and they're happy, and that's awesome. And for other people, it's 3 times a week or whatever. Post my first baby, we were in maintenance sex mode. I was totally happy to have sex once a month and for it to be mediocre. That still allowed us to feel connected and to be good. And post baby number 2, that is actually destructive to me. It makes me want sex less. I don't care if we had sex twice a year, as long as it's quality and there's novelty involved. So renegotiating what that looks like. And the main thing is for both of you to be satisfied, with the caveat that I heard the lovely Shannon Boodram on Instagram say, the amount of sex you should be having is the amount the person who wants it least wants it. And if you want it more than that, you need to change how you are having sex with that person, which I thought was just very beautifully put.
I feel like that requires a round 2 interview. That was good. Myth number 4, we will eventually go back to our pre-baby sex life.
Yeah. So just like all things baby world, we hold on to this idea we're going to bounce back to our pre-baby bodies, bounce back to work the way it was, to anything the way it was pre-kids. And some people may have a body that goes back exactly to how it worked before their kids, but usually there's something that's still always a little bit different. Your sex life is no different. You are in a unique season right now. And I've been saying a lot lately, and it will shift again and again and again. So your sex life needs to look like what it needs to look like today, right now. And that will continue to shift and evolve over time. But holding on to getting back to something you had before kids is getting in the way of you creating what is possible right now.
Myth number 5, we should magically know how to please each other.
Mm-hmm. So just like I said before, we aren't all born 5-star sex superstars or chefs. Being good at sex means learning about sex, even like really basic stuff. I'm not even talking about like kinky BDSM stuff, just like how does your libido actually work and how does pleasure actually work in your body and what are the like 6 erogenous zones of the vaginal anatomy. It takes communicating together about that knowledge and how it pertains to the two of you. And it takes a growth mindset. It takes having time where you deliberately go, today we're going to try that new sex position with no hopes that it will be magically amazing, just with the goal of trying it. We're having a lab night, you know? And there's a difference between lab night and epic sex night. So embrace lab night, embrace failing on purpose so that you can figure things out and learn them.
Thank you very much. If people want to access, you mentioned a course and a quiz. If people want to work with you, can you tell us about the resources that you have available and what's it?
Yeah. So right now, I'm going to be launching this quiz very soon. I can send you the link.
You got to launch it now because we're talking about it.
Yes. Well, I am. I'm literally putting together videos this week for all the fun stuff. So quiz will be available on the homepage of my website. I'll send it to you for the show notes as well. And my Sex After Kids program is launching this fall. I'm just putting together the details on that. That is going to be like a 9-month couples program. It's kind of like go at your own pace videos with Q&A calls, but all the concepts we've talked about today. So developing common language together. And then my style is like fun, follow along, sexy date nights. And the reason it's 9 months is just to give you a practical amount of time to implement it in. Because if you can only manage one date in a month, then you need more than 3 months to actually make that happen. The waitlist and info are on my website, and people can always find me on Instagram. I share tons of practical tools and tips and exercises there. I'm at the Happy V Project on Instagram. And like, do not be shy. I love getting DMs. I love talking to people about what's going on for them. But those are the 2 big things that people can do now.
I think you're unbelievable. I think you're amazing. I know you're doing good work. I'm going to start stalking your social media now and get all the free tips Leslie. And then maybe jump on your program. I think everybody would probably benefit from some little piece of that, even if it's just learning, even if your sex life is absolutely brilliant, but just to learn, because you're talking about the intellectual part that sort of informs the practice, that informs down the line the fun and the connection, which I think would appeal to a lot of people. So I'm excited to see that come out. Thank you so much. This was wonderful.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for listening. If you liked, please like. If you'd like more, please subscribe. And if you have a story you'd like to share, I'd love to hear from you. Until next time.